Wellness. We have a fabulous topic today, and it's called the rushing woman syndrome. So this is a topic that all three of us can relate to. I'm here, Dr. Sonia, with Dr. Mindy and Dr. Caitlin, and you've heard us talking a bit about stress and how it affects your physical body and your mindset and how that has an influence on how you basically perceive your world. So today we're going to talk about the rushing woman syndrome, which was coined by Dr. Libby Weaver, which all three of us love to listen to. And if any of you haven't, we will put the TED Talk below this podcast in our Facebook and our closed Facebook group. So please join the Facebook group to get that TED Talk. But it's an amazing topic because we do feel it's a foundational cause of so much of what women are facing today. So Dr. Mindy, you've been reading the book and really excited about the rushing woman syndrome. So why don't you kind of describe your thoughts on that topic and what a rushing woman is? Like maybe define it for us.
Okay, so I'll define it with the perception or the perspective that I took it as I read the book. So I think my biggest takeaway from this book is that we can be eating right. We can be detoxing right. We can be doing all the things that we think are healthy, exercising right, but that our bodies were not designed to be rushing around in this world that we're living in. And for me, where I saw it as the rushing is everything from checking the phone all the time. Our brains were not meant to have that much input to the overscheduled life. I know you and I, our three of us talked about even in our work day. I mean, today is Monday, I will go 12 hours without a lunch break. Prior to this book, I used to think that was like a badge of honor. And now I'm like, wait a second, my body wasn't designed to do that. So I think it's, for me, the takeaway is that we are going against our biology, that we are really designed to be more like the cave woman who sits around a fire and maybe goes out and collects some berries and comes back. We are not meant to be at the pace that we're at. And the book, she so eloquently, brilliantly describes the hormonal cascade and how this rushing woman syndrome is causing progesterone to go low, which is causing estrogen to go high, and like all the cascading events that happen with that. So I think for me, and Caitlin, you and I were talking about this at the beginning too, is like, wow, like you could be doing everything right and missing this one thing, and you're off. Your hormones will never correct. You're completely off your design. So yeah, that was kind of my takeaway from the book.
Yeah, I tell women all the time that, one thought can create a whole different cascade of events in the body hormonally, because that thought is going to create that feeling, and that behind that feeling we have a meaning, depending on that event. So right away our stress hormone goes up, and like you said, she was talking about that progesterone level. Progesterone gets converted into cortisol, which is our stress hormone. That's just how we are made, how physiologically we're made. So if we're continuously in that rush state, we're continuously just trying to survive the day. So we can't survive and thrive at the same time.
Right. Right.
Which is why one of the reasons that we see so many women depleted in their sex hormones or such crazy shifts, because our body goes, okay, what's more important, energy or sex hormones?
Right.
Sex hormones out the door. And so DHEA comes down no matter how good your cholesterol is. Your cholesterol is not going to be creating DHEA to make estrogen, testosterone. It's going to be taking that cholesterol and making cortisol. And that's where you get the pregnenolone shift. And that's where you're pulling everything over to the other side. And no, I couldn't agree more with this rushing woman. I think the three of us are a testament to the definition of rushing woman syndrome. We take on a lot, and it's not that we do it because we don't like it. I love doing it. However, it's definitely taking a toll. It has an effect. So, Dr. Mindy, you said we're more created to be like cave women sitting around. I don't know if I agree with sitting around, but I do think that we need to slow things down.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize when we've hit that threshold or before we've even hit that threshold. So I don't think it's about sitting around not doing anything, but just recognizing physiologically we are not built like men. Their to-do hormone is testosterone. That's how they're built. Ours is oxytocin, which is released when we're in community, when we're gathering, when we're, you know, talking to one another, when we're in a tribe, exactly like this one. So it's really important for us to find that point where we reach a certain state of like, okay, this isn't working for me. What can I do to shift it so that these things that pull us, like you said, Dr. Caitlin, the things that we do, we love, but there has to be a point where we recognize, okay, is it taking over my life or am I still contributing to this thing that's pulling me?
Right. Yeah. And having, I love the analogy she uses in, I believe it was in her TED Talk, was that our adrenals are meant to work like our light switch. Yeah. And that you turn it on and then you turn it off. But for most of us, we're asking our adrenals to work all the time. Yeah. And that, and so that was like, that was really hit home with me, was like, and then the other thing that hit home with me in the book was stop worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. Like, let it happen and then you deal with it. Then you can worry then. But so much of us burn our adrenals out trying to prevent something major happening that may never have happened in the first place. Right. That was a huge,
well, that's the wiring, right? So we're wired to protect. We're wired to protect ourselves. And so the walls go up and the negative mind comes in trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to prevent that pain or prevent that discomfort instead of just allowing things to happen. So there's a big control component to that too. So we can't just relax and allow. And that really, it's wiring that's happened for so many generations that it has to be a conscious effort to really create a pattern that serves you better. And that can come from different things too. I don't know if I know you guys have heard of Tim Ferriss. He does that fear setting exercise that I've given to a lot of women. And essentially you're just bringing your analytical mind in a little bit and you write down what your fears are. And then you're writing down scenarios. Okay, what would happen if that fear actually was true? What would you do if it came true? Like, so he takes you through these steps and all of a sudden at the end of it, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's not so bad. Like there's nothing that I cannot deal with if it happened.
What does he call that?
Fear setting exercise.
So instead of goal setting, what you do is what scares you? Yeah. If this were to happen, worst case scenario, what could I do? And then you list out action steps. And then, okay, if I did this, then what will it look like? What can I do? Yeah. And so you essentially break it down until you're like, oh, well, whatever. I got it. It's not that bad. So I have done that a couple times where I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. You know, I've worked so hard for this. I could lose everything. And then I look at it and I go, nope. Yeah. Nope. No big deal. There's still something else that can be done. And it really, really helps change your perception or your perspective on the situation. Yeah. And it's so freeing. Don't you think, Dr. Sonia?
Oh, absolutely. Because fear keeps us in this state where we can't expand, we can't thrive, because now we're making all decisions from that place instead of from a place where we're just kind of flexible and going with the flow. And that's really hard for a lot of people to do because we want to control what's going to happen. And I think what we should also do for the listeners too is kind of describe, okay, yes, we've described a bit about what the rushing woman is, but what does that actually look like with the adrenals too? Like we always talk about the different stages, right? So when I look at the rushing woman, I'm thinking it's the diva stage where you're doing it, you're getting it done, but things are on the outside looking okay, but on the inside, things are starting to get depleted. So what are some, symptoms or some scenarios that you guys come across with even patients that come into your clinic?
Well, the ones that I really resonated with were the person who can't give up her cup of coffee in the morning. That was I was like, oh, that's me, unfortunately. But I found a healthy way to do it. So I've justified it in my head now. And that you can't wind down without wine at night. Like she hammers that home over and over and how detrimental that is. You run around and you say, I've got so much to do. I'm so stressed. I'm so busy. there were years ago, I used to laugh at my friend group and think, oh my God, we all walk around, call each other up months after, seeing each other. We haven't seen each other for a couple months, and we call each other up and we're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And as women, I feel like we wear that like a badge of honor. Like, oh, it's so cool to be so busy, but that's not good either, to be so busy. So I think those were some of the ones that I resonated with, was the never feeling like you're getting it done, overwhelmed by the amount of work that you have to do. Dr. Libby also talks about taking your cell phone into the bathroom with you. And do you take your cell phone in the bathroom? Do you check your cell phone at stoplights? I'm proud to say that I've never taken my cell phone into the bathroom and checked my email.
Me neither. I actually think it's really gross. Yeah.
I'm very, very proud of that. But I have checked it at a light. I've definitely checked it at a light. Never check it before you go to bed. That was the other thing, that the rushing woman is always checking her email because she feels like if she misses something, that she's not going to be able to keep up. There's you talked a little bit about that, Sonia, about how you just feel like there's always this tendency of having to keep up with what?
Yeah.
I don't know what we're trying to keep up with.
Yeah. Well, like you said, busyness is glorified, right? So if you're not busy, then you're not looking like you're doing anything significant or important.
You're lazy.
You're not doing anything. And I think it's kind of a touchy topic, but when the feminist era came around and we were trying to figure out our place in society and in our culture, and trying to figure out what is it that defines us as women. And we didn't want it to be that stay-at-home mom that cooks and cleans and doesn't do anything, or in quotation marks, doesn't do anything. Right. And we wanted to be equal, or do what we can in the workforce. And so I think there's been an extreme that's happened over the years. I think generations before, because there was these roles, it was almost easier for women to not, what am I trying to say here? To not get into that rush state. However, we want more, right? And we're three of us are examples of that. We want more. We know we have more to give to the world too, but now it's finding that fine balance. Because, go ahead.
Yep. Well, I was just going to say, I think the big problem is not women in the workforce or working and doing the same jobs as men. I don't think that's the problem. What I find is the problem is when we're trying to do everything in the workforce, working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and then still coming home, raising kids, cooking, cleaning. And we're still trying to do everything. So we're still taking care of the house. We're still doing the grocery shopping and the cleaning and the, homework. And then we're still doing everything and trying to, push our careers forward. We want the bigger house, the more expensive car. We want the bigger bank account. We want.
Yeah.
But there's no pulling back on other areas. And I think that's where we're getting into trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then, go ahead.
She mentions that they've done studies that if with one child and two working parents, that when both the working parents come home at night, that it is likely that the mom's going to kick in and do the child caring and the cleaning of the house, and that she works 3 times as hard as the dad. Just because that's how we're built. And, I will tell you, as I'm the primary breadwinner of my family, my husband does a lot with the kids. I mean, he acts like a stay-at-home dad, but guess what? What I've noticed over the years is that he doesn't have that same hard wiring of like nesting. So the environment in the home, he doesn't care if there's something out of place, or if there's a mismatched pillow, or if like that kind of, or there's some dirty dishes. It just doesn't like affect him the same way it may affect me, where I feel a biological desire to keep my house a certain way, for my family to be a certain way. It's like a nesting thing. It's so interesting.
Yeah, well, our space is an extension of ourselves for women, I believe. Whereas for men, like you said, it doesn't affect them the same way. And then same goes for the stay-at-home moms too. It's not even that it's just the working women that come home, but the stay-at-home moms now have all this schedule with the kids, right? They're either doing some sort of music or doing some sort of sport, and it's kind of on all the time. There's no break. And now we're passing that same scheduling down to the next generation too.
Yeah.
Where we want to keep them busy.
Yeah.
The rushing kid syndrome. Exactly. It's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, my sister, when my kids were little, we were all sitting around watching the Berenstain Bears. You guys know the Berenstain Bears, right? And the mama bear gets in the car, and she's got the two baby bears in the back, and she can't remember all the activities they have to do in the afternoon. So she has them repeating it out loud. She looks at the brother and she's like, okay, brother bear, we've got violin lesson, tutor, football, dinner, Spanish tutor, and so he's in the back, like saying all the things, and the daughter's saying all the things that she's got to do so nobody forgets. And my sister looks at turns to me and she goes, that looks like your family. And it was like a whack on the side of my head. I was like, oh my God, she's right. That does look like my family. We're like running from activity to activity. And immediately after that, I told the kids, one activity. You can do one thing. Pick one. Or do one thing at a time, but we're not doing 10.
Yeah.
So I agree. And then, I mean, don't get me going on what it takes to get a kid in school these days into college, but these kids applying to college have to have these very diverse resumes of playing instruments, speak a language, do a sport, get good grades, and you may get into school. The culture is fostering these rush children as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not in a culture of just being enough.
Right.
You always have to prove yourself. And this is, I like going back to Tony Robbins when he talks about the 6 essential needs that we have as humans. So I feel like we're always trying to fulfill one of those needs. And when we don't feel like we are, then we're doing more in order to get there. So I think it's a whole cultural, generational thing that's going on. And it's going to take time to change. But if we as women can change ourselves, then that seed we can plant in the kids too.
Yeah.
Can we go back to what we're seeing symptom-wise in women from the rushing women syndrome?
Yeah.
Because not only do I see everything that Dr. Mindy said, some of the things that I see in women especially is their hormones are looking more like male hormones, where we have a lot more testosterone, a ton more testosterone. And part of it is because we're do. That is the doer hormone, right? And so when we're trying to do so much more, everything shifts. And going back to what you said, like our biology is not meant to have more testosterone. And what does that mean? Well, it means menstrual problems, either irregular or heavy cycles or painful cycles. PCOS, huge. Yes. Endometriosis, huge. And those are 2 huge diagnoses now on the uprise. I'm getting more and more people who are like, yeah, I've had endometriosis. I've had this for years, or I have PCOS, or I found out after having my kids that I have these things, which now makes sense as to why I had such issues menstruating when I was younger. So our menstrual cycles are now a mess, and women think that
that's normal.
It's normal to have painful menstrual cycles, or it's normal to have really heavy menstrual cycles,
or to have none at all. You know how many women I've had tell me, oh, I don't have a period. I'm like, what? That's not good.
Or cycles are really short or super, super long, right?
Yeah.
We're not finding cycles between that 26 and 29 day super often. There's a lot of hormone dysfunction and dysregulation happening because of this.
And it shows up. Yeah, and it shows up in everyday life, right? Like there's more irritability, there's brain fog, fatigue, like all these things, and we just start moving through them because we still have to move through the day, and we don't take time to figure out, okay, where is this actually coming from? So the hormones, like low progesterone, like, what woman out there doesn't have low progesterone?
Right.
Yeah. Causing these issues like the PCOS and the endometriosis, the fibroids, the now transition into menopause is a lot more challenging too. But if you go a generation back, I remember talking to my grandma before she got dementia, and she was like, I didn't even notice. And now that's the hot topic in, your 40s and 50s are the hot flashes, the night sweats, and all these things.
Yeah. And you actually bring up a really interesting point, because I asked my mom about menopause, and she's like, oh, I don't even remember it. Like it was a no-brainer to me. And so yet, as I'm in perimenopause, I definitely am noticing symptoms like we've talked about. And I realize now, like, as far as my mom's concerned, we definitely genetically align on a lot of things, but we have not genetically aligned on this experience that I'm having with perimenopause. And it's because her pace of life, she was not a rushing woman at all. Oh my God. She was a very even keeled, non-worrier. She's a believer that everything works out the way it's supposed to work out. Very calm spirit. So I'm like, no wonder you didn't have, I know, like, no wonder you didn't have, menopause problems.
Well, and I really think that's, there's a whole lot of toxicity in the world, right? And we've talked about that, and we'll continue to talk about it. But until we can slow things down, and I'm not saying you don't do the things that you love, but until we slow it down, the perfect diet and the supplementation and the detoxes, like you said, Dr. Mindy, it's only going to do so much.
Right.
And your body, when it views it's in go, stress mode, other things are going to shut down, and you're just not going to be able to function the way that you're meant to function. So there will be things that get turned off, like fertility, right? We were talking about that earlier, Dr. Mindy. And so and fertility problems are on an uprise.
It's a major uprise. Yeah. And I always looked at fertility, until I read this book, I always looked at fertility as having such a huge toxic piece, which I think it does. And we've talked about that with the Mount House. But it makes such perfect sense that the body would become less fertile in the rushing woman, because where is there room for a pregnancy and a baby if the woman's rushing around? So
you're surviving, not thriving.
Yeah, that would make so much sense.
Yeah. There's no room for growth when you're in that survival state.
Right.
So of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you think about that. No, I was just gonna say one more thing. And then you think about, like, well, what's the medical profession doing for that? They're trying to toxify people to get the fertility going. And it's like, wait a second.
Yeah. Well, we're in a culture of quick fixes too, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I want it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I also liked how she addressed exercise, because I think that's a huge thing too. Like, she spoke about how she was a runner before and couldn't lose the weight, because she was stressed with school and going to college and everything. And then she started doing Tai Chi, and all of a sudden the weight started coming off. Yeah. So again, it's activating that parasympathetic state, right? Using things like yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong and all these things that can really help create more of that parasympathetic, again, to help the progesterone, to help us get into that oxytocin state and help us thrive. So we're not in that because exercise, as great as it is, like, I'm not saying don't exercise, but it's still a stress on the body. So we want to be in it for short periods of time and then stop. Yeah. To bring us back to balance.
So here's my question to both you gals. So how's that changed your approach to Spartan training?
Even since we started, I've been telling Nick I don't feel comfortable with it. Because it took me a long time to get out of that mindset of working out that way. Yeah. And I actually feel stronger with yoga and everything. And then now I've had to shift my workouts a little bit. So I'm trying to find the balance, because I'm still trying to do both so that I still feel centered when I'm doing it. But I know I can go in that direction of just doing that HIIT exercise and do that. I have the ability to. But I got to bring myself back and be like, okay, if I'm doing that 3 days a week, I'm also doing yoga 3 to 4 times a week. So I can, again, bring myself down from that state.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that I think there's that balance between high intensity workout, but for short periods of time. You don't want to just do high intensity. I was a distance runner, and I was really good at it. Yeah. Having really long legs makes it easy. And
you have a distance runner's body. I can see that.
Yeah, I was actually offered full ride scholarships, to even some of the state schools or schools in the States, being from Canada. And I hated running. It was a stress because, I was a provincial runner. I ended up placing top 3 in the province in high school. And so there was just expectations. And when you have a bad race, if you don't place first, people go, what happened? Why'd you lose? And so I have a negative feeling towards running now because of all of that.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I really think that there's a nice balance that can happen between doing yoga, meditation, Tai Chi. I actually used to teach Tai Chi, going from running to Tai Chi. And I think if you can find that balance, it's really beneficial, because you do want that burst training, that high intensity, just to get things going. But you don't want to do that for long periods of time, because when your body's stressed, when it views that it's in a chronic state of stress, long exercise, prolonged exercise is, like you said, Dr. Sonia, an added stress to the body that just further breaks it down. It further shifts you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I think also shifting, we've been talking about stress a little bit too, and in more of a negative tone, because it's depleting us. So stress is bad when it's in this state where we get depleted, but stress is also our friend. Right. So yeah, being in that stress is what kind of gets us going. It's what gets us motivated. It gives us our fire and drives us to do what we do. But we just have to learn to listen to our bodies so that we can bring ourselves back. And as psychiatrists, I don't know if you guys have heard this TED talk by Kelly McGonigal. She talks about the relationship with stress and how we can shift it, and how even when we're under stress, physiologically, we actually release oxytocin. Because we are primed to want to be in a village scenario. We are primed to want to seek help when we're in a stressful state. So stress can be our friend, but again, in short spurts, right? Yeah. So cortisol, we want to use it 2% of the time. 98% of the time, we want to be in parasympathetic, not the other way around, which we are today.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to really, I keep going back to what's a cave woman built to do? That she was built to go out and obviously and pick berries and things like that. But there were times she had to, I'm sure, go, sprint to, maybe she did some of the hunting, sprint to kill a live animal. So that would be more equivalent to like a HIIT training or something where you're just like specifically doing intense exercise for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Or like moving things, I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm sure she picked up some rocks and moved them around.
Probably.
So she's probably used to heavy lifting, right?
Yes.
And bending. I thought about this with cave women. I'm sure she sat in a squatted position a lot, which is more like a yoga type of movement where you're with flexible joints. Yeah. She wasn't sitting at a desk all day long.
Yeah, so, well, that's a huge topic on its own, with all the amount of cesareans that are happening now, like 1 in 3 births are C-section, and a lot of it's positioning, because we're not sitting in that squat position that our grandmas would have sat at. Like my grandma would have cleaned the floor in a squat position. She did everything squatting. She cooked while she was squatting. Wow. So she had all her births at home. She had like 6, 7 kids at home, no problem. Whereas today we are sitting in chairs with our legs crossed all day, right? So I think so we have to adapt to what today's life is. So if we need to do those HIIT exercises, we need to do yoga, we need to do these things to create that stress in our body. But then again, listen to what we need as balance. Mm-hmm.
And, I just started thinking like the ramifications of that, like that's a part of the rushed woman complex, is the sitting with the legs crossed, and then the C-section rates are up right now. And then that's affecting the microbiome of generations to, that are being born.
Well, we could do an entire episode.
I know.
If we go down that road today.
I know. Sorry. I'm totally geeking out on this.
Oh, no, I agree. Because I think part of it is the fear behind delivery too. That's a huge component, where it's a medical procedure. We need to do it in a hospital. Things can go wrong. So there's so many different components to birthing a baby now, let alone growing a baby, right?
Yeah.
And then Russian syndrome plays into
how
does it affect the baby's utero?
Yeah. So how do we help our listeners? Like, how do we help the women, look at their lives, just have some perspective on, like, am I actually rushing? Because there's also some women that actually really thrive off of that rush. Mm-hmm. Even so, they may not even be aware that it's affecting them physiologically. Mm-hmm. So we kind of talked about some of the symptoms to look out for, but what's something that they can start incorporating in their lives, or how can they become more aware of when this is affecting them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the idea of thinking about the nervous system and how do you strengthen the parasympathetic nervous system, because the rushing woman is so sympathetic driven, which is the gas pedal. You know, the gas is always on. So how do we put the brakes on? And I can only tell you some of the things that I'm finding for myself and my patients. Like, I think we talked about this, like scheduling downtime, like really putting blocks in your week where, like, for me, it's Friday afternoon and Friday evening. I say no to almost everything that comes offered, you know, socially to me during that time. I just need to be home then. And I do the same thing on Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. So I blocks a time that I know I'm going to get the downtime. But there are also yoga. I mean, breathing, chiropractic can increase the parasympathetic nervous system. There's so many tools that we have access to. Meditation. You gotta keep doing them on a daily basis. Some of these things, and you have to be consciously aware that you live in a sympathetic dominant world, and so you're going to have to really put some effort into this parasympathetic nervous system.
Oh, I was just going to say what we're doing. It's kind of extreme. Most people aren't going to do this. But we're moving out of our house at the end of the month, and I've gone through my clothes and everything, and we're selling off things that we don't need, that aren't adding value to our lives. And we're building out a Mercedes Sprinter van, and we're going to live in the van over the summer. So I'm still working. However, on weekends, it's going to force us to get out of the city and to go to a lake, to walk around barefoot in the forest, to slow down, because I am go, 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 go. I'm not going to have the TV or anything else, which is going to allow me more downtime. We are bringing our yoga mats, and so we're going to do, you know, morning yoga in the sun, that kind of thing, and really just slowing down over the summer and seeing different parts of the world, Washington, Oregon, up into British Columbia.
Vancouver. Well, outside of Vancouver.
And that's what we're doing to slow down, because, you know, ever since we graduated, we've opened up a new practice every less than 3 years, and I just need to take some time for us and calm it down. So that's what I'm doing, and I don't recommend everybody go and move out of your house and live in a van,
or why not?
Or if you can, do it.
If I could, I would. You know, I've got one more kid to get out of the house, and then I don't know. It sounds pretty dreamy to me.
You can get the bigger van than what we have. We have the 144 wheelbase. You can give him a little bunk bed, you know, all in the pictures. But hey, I've seen some build outs where it's pretty creative.
I think what you said was really important. Really figuring out what gives you what's valuable to you, and also what gives you joy. So the decisions you're making day to day, the things you're saying yes to, ask yourself that question, like, is this going to give me joy, or is it going to create more stress, or is it going to create that rushing feeling inside? So just taking a second and asking yourself that. I
find that where I get stuck is that I get like 10 things offered up to me as far as social events and things like that, and they all sound great, and I want to do them all. But then when I actually map them out on a calendar, I realize, like, oh my God, if I do them all, I'm going to enjoy none of them. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's pacing. I think it's pacing too.
And learning to say no, and that it's okay. Right? Yeah. Just learning to say no. It's very hard. It's a hard habit. Yeah. But once you do it once and you realize how fantastic that feels, it'll become a pattern. So just saying no to what does not give you joy. So just ask yourself that question.
And just because family or friends ask something of you, you don't have to do it.
They won't love you less. I think that's the fear, right? You're going to disappoint someone, or there's an expectation, but they're not going to love you less. Just say no.
Well, I think you should say yes sometimes, though.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's what, again, I'm going to say that, what do you say yes to? What do you say no? What if you're given all these things that light you up? You're excited about them all. Where I get stuck is I get like, okay, well, I want to do all those things, but I can't do them all together, or they're going to make me crazy. So that's my learning right now, is trying to understand when to say no, when to say yes, which is why I'm good with like, oh, it's on Friday night. Oh yeah, I don't do that on Friday night. I recently said yes to something on Sunday afternoon and I regretted it. It ruined my whole weekend. I was like, why did I do that? Sunday afternoon, I don't say yes. So it was nice to have times of the week that I know I'm going to get downtime and that I don't say yes at those times. So that's kind of what's been helpful for me.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think you need to make rules for yourself saying, yes, I'll say yes as long as it meets these criteria. If it doesn't meet these criteria, then it's a no.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what Dr. Mindy, what you said with the scheduling is really important. I was watching this Facebook Live that Vishen did on Mind Valley, and he was talking about his Google Calendar, and he's like, if you look at it, you think, oh my God, I'm crazy because it's completely full, but it's also full with family time. It's full with me time. It's so everything is scheduled out so that if somebody comes and says, I want to do something at this time, you look at your schedule and say, I'm sorry, that's my me time. And of course, there's going to be exceptions because life happens.
Yeah.
But you have this framework that you can follow, and then there's no stress about deciding either, because I think that in itself creates stress.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Putting some solid lines there in place for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so
guilt plays into this too, right? You feel guilty.
Yeah. Huge for women.
She talks about guilt. The Russian woman experiences a lot of guilt, and
full of guilt.
I think we all have learned that guilt is just a useless emotion. It's not really an emotion that can propel you forward. So for me, because I can feel guilt a lot, I just sort of acknowledge it and I go, oh, why am I feeling guilty? Okay, that's not helping me be better in this situation. So you just have to kind of lean into it and learn to let it go.
Yeah, and figuring out what drives you. I think another thing I'll put underneath this post are those Tony Robbins 6 needs, because it's those needs that drive our decisions. So if one of our biggest needs is love and connection, then we'll feel if we say no, we're not going to have that connection with that person again, right? So if one of our needs is to feel significant, then we realize that, okay, if I'm not busy, I'm not doing anything significant or important. So figuring out what drives you can also help make different decisions.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And so where do you guys, I know we've talked about this before, but where do you think fasting fits into this? Because fasting unto itself can be stressful, but it also can be really beneficial. And I can tell you as a rushing woman, it can give you a lot more mental and physical energy that allows you to rush even more.
See, I see it differently.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's why I think this is, I'm starting to change my behavior around it, but I do notice that I used fasting and ketosis as a way to accomplish more. And
so I did the opposite. I use fasting as a way to slow down. So the days that I'm fasting, I'm making sure I'm not doing anything. I'm doing more yoga. I'm using it as a reflective period instead of doing more. So I think it's probably very individual, but I find fasting so healing. So it's interesting that that's what happens for you. So that might be just you telling yourself something, right?
No,
it's something to look at.
It was something that I realized again after reading this book. I'm like, oh my gosh, part of the problem is that with all the nutrition work that we all are in alignment with, all the ketosis or a ketogenic diet and all the detoxing, I feel mentally more clear and capable than ever before, which has allowed me to do more than ever before, which is really fun and is contributing to more rushing woman syndrome. So I'll be working on that.
I align more with, I think I'm actually between you two for the fasting. I don't rush when I'm fasting. I stay busy because I'm normally fasting during my work days, which like you, Dr. Mindy, I can work 10, 12-hour days straight, no lunch. And I actually do better at work on those days when I don't eat. Have clearer mind, better communication. I'm more present time conscious. So my body functions better when I do that. If I were like at home and doing things like building this van and packing stuff and selling stuff and donating stuff, I don't think I could do it on a fasting state. I think that would stress me out and my body out too much, that it would be just a bad situation all around for me. So I find that I'm probably in the middle of you two with fasting.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with your mindset behind it too. If you think it's going to be go, go, go hard on the body, then that's how fasting is going to be for you. If you think it's going to be more relaxing, it's going to be more healing, then that's where it's going to be for you. You have to figure out what relationship you have with fasting, or what thought process you have with it. And that's likely how it's going to express itself.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Sonia.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, what can we leave our listeners with, right? So now that we've defined the rushing woman, and if they're listening to this and realizing, oh God, that's me, what are some steps that they can take now going forward to seek support?
The first thing I would say, before I go through my steps that I've been thinking about, is one, I think it would be really fun to start a conversation on our Facebook group about strategies that people are applying to say no. I think that's a really big one. I'd love, when this podcast airs, we should start, here's how I say no. These are the strategies, because I think that we don't have enough of those as women. So that would be really good. The second piece, and to answer your question, is I think it's the parasympathetic nervous system. How do we pour love into that nervous system? What is it? I know for me, I'm doing more yoga and less strenuous exercise. I've completely gone to 3 days a week for sure of yoga, and if I can throw some HIIT training in there, great. But the yoga is a no wiggle room. I have to get my 3 days in. I'm meditating in the morning more often when I get up. I'm asking myself questions like, when a worry thought comes up, like, has that actually happened? If it hasn't happened, then let it go. I'm trying to train my brain to kind of let it go. And then, we talked about this last time. I'm also doing more of like fueling up on carbs and things around, a week or two before I actually get my cycle. How do I fuel my body with foods that I might not give it the first couple of weeks of the month? So I'm looking at those kind of things of like feeding myself, as opposed to always, I've been ever since I learned about heavy metals, I've been like detoxing metals. It's all been at this detox mode. And now I realize, hey, you know what? I think I need to go into a build-up mode. I need to go into a nurturing mode. I need to go into more caring and less depleting.
Yeah, to fill your cup up.
Yeah. That's kind of where my brain went with this book, is like parasympathetic, Mindy, really work on that parasympathetic. So what about you, Caitlin?
Well, so I've been working a lot on what gives me joy, what gives me value, and what don't I need. And so that's what both my husband and I have been going through our house, going, what do we want? What gives us joy? What don't we need? And so that's very freeing, like decluttering, getting rid of stuff. That actually reduces a whole lot of stress. But for me, honestly, it's walking around barefoot outside. I love being barefoot. It just makes me feel so good. The other thing is being in the sun and a good book, and just having some downtime, some quiet time. I have my phone every night at 9:30. It goes on do not disturb. So text messages, phone calls, emails, nothing. I don't get any of that. I don't see it. It doesn't vibrate, so that I can shut my brain off, that I can do my evening meditation. And sorry, my dog's making all sorts of noise right now. I write in my gratitude journal every single day. I write who I am. So I am, and then I write everything out of the type of person that I am. And then I write what I'm grateful for that day. And that really helps bring everything into perspective for me. And it really does help slow me down instead of that go, 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 go. Because I used to write out, what do I have to do? What's on the docket? I don't do that anymore. So those are just some of the tips that I've been doing.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. The yoga, the meditation, the gratitude journal, reading, and scheduling that set time. That this is just what it is. This is what I'm going to do, and there's no like going this way or that way from that schedule, so that too that you have to commit. So first one for me is always committing to myself. Like,
Yeah.
I am worth it, and I'm going to commit to myself so I can fill my cup up so I can actually have room to give to others around me. So I do believe, shutting down at a certain time at nighttime, I think is key. And then also starting the day, like Dr. Mindy was saying, with meditation and even that, visualizing gratitude. It's these simple things that we can incorporate that can bring that rushing state down. Because life, as we know it, it's going to keep happening, right? The schedules may stay the same, but we can change our relationship to it. So it doesn't feel like a rush, but instead everything we're doing is very joyful. So that would be my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. It is kind of funny when you stop and think about it. Like, what are we rushing towards? What are we rushed? It's like you get somewhere only to figure out that there's somewhere else to go now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you go to Baja. I'm planning another trip now already.
Nice.
Because I'm like, okay, that's needed. Because when Dr. Caitlin said sun, I'm like, I need some. We're getting it now here in Vancouver, which is great. Summer's coming. But I just need that heat.
Well, and then you do yoga retreats too. Don't you have one in February?
Yeah, next February, another yoga retreat. Yep. Pluck yourself away from that busy state.
I want to put that on our calendar. And if hubby will come with me, great. If not, I want to come by myself. It's
absolutely.
Time. Yeah, it's a great time of year to do that.
Yeah,
hey, Mindy, if the hubbies won't go, you and I'll go together.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Yes. I love it. Okay. Niles doesn't want to go.
He likes yoga and that. It hurts his ankles and that. He was a high-end athlete like all of us, and his body's taken a beat down. So certain poses, that competitive feeling in him still there, where he's like, I got to do it. I got to hold it. I got to, but it hurts. So
so that's why he needs to come.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly my husband too. Same thing. He hates it because it's so painful. I'm like, and I tell him the same thing. Well, that's why you have to go.
Yeah, that's why you need it.
Yeah.
Well, this is a topic we could probably talk about forever, and it's such a great topic. And I hope from this podcast that it creates conversation in women's lives with their tribes and other women around them, so that they can really be more gracious to themselves, right? And help each other out towards others too. Yeah, just have that compassion for yourself, and then that compassion will come out to other people as well.
So I agree.
Go ahead.
No, I agree. I feel like as women, this is a conversation. Sonia, you said it, where this is like the epidemic of the century for women, and I think it's so true. Every person I even mention this book to, they're like, "That's me. That's me."
Yeah.
And I think there would be peace if we just all sort of put our masks down and just said, "Yeah, I'm stuck in this rut, and I'd like to stop it." And that's what I hope comes from this podcast, is that we allow women a platform in which they can stop rushing, and that we can all support each other in it.
And not to feel guilty about not rushing.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
Remember, find us on Facebook. Let's get the subject talking about, because the more we talk about it, the less taboo it's going to be. We're all going to feel better about it. Please be interactive. We're trying to be super vulnerable on there and let you guys know our weaknesses or our downfalls or our strengths. And we'd really love to hear what you guys have, because honestly, I bet you we could learn a lot from you guys as well. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast, download it, and share it. We'd really appreciate it.
Yes.
Awesome.